Hello, this is Mark from Productive Computing and Productive Computing University. You are about to watch a selected JSON lesson from our free course called JSON Fundamentals for FileMaker Developers. Knowing how to create, parse, and manipulate JSON is essential in order to integrate FileMaker with the world of APIs, Claris Connect, artificial intelligence, and more. In this complete course, we'll cover everything you need to know about JSON from the perspective of a Claris FileMaker Pro developer. We're making this course available for free because we feel it's an important and essential building block for you to understand in order to advance your skills to the next level. And once you learn how to manipulate JSON formatted text, you are that much closer to accomplishing your first API integration in your own FileMaker apps. And like all our other courses at Productive Computing University, this course comes complete with downloadable FileMaker files for you to use and follow along with. These downloadable files are available directly in selected lessons inside the course. There's a link in the description to enroll in this free course called JSON Fundamentals for FileMaker Developers at productivecomputinguniversity.com. Okay, now let's dive into the lesson. In this lesson, we continue to work with parsing data. This time we take on line items. So what I'm going to do next is go into the relationship graph and just have it so that when a customer is deleted, it deletes the related records in the invoices table. And when the invoices are deleted, it deletes the related line items in the line items table. That way now I can go to customers up here, or contacts as it were called, and then delete all the records here. And that should immediately delete any related invoices, which it did. And now we're focusing on capturing and parsing the line items. Okay, so now we are on our third level of depth here in our script. And the script is going to get a little bit more advanced and a lot more to follow, but if you've followed me so far, it's going to be similar. I'm going to take a chance here and copy the entire invoice loop section, and then we'll make room, lots of room, within the invoices, because within invoices, we have to parse the line items. So now I'll paste this entire block of text here, and I'll immediately name it so that we don't lose sight of what's going on. Invoice line items. And we will take out some of this extra room here so that we can fit more of the script on the same screen without too much scrolling. Okay, so now we're working with invoice line items. So we need to change this up a bit. Instead of totaling the invoices, we want to total the line items, so that's going to be an L. And now we need to calculate how to get the value count of the keys for our line items array. And if we look at our JSON again, this is really the blueprint for everything. We can see that we are working with customers, then we pick the right customer, then we work within the invoice array. Now we have to pick the right invoice, so we have to include this marker and a counter. This counter is going to be $I for invoices, and then we'll join that with a quote and a closing bracket dot line items. And that should count our line items before we begin our loop. Then we'll create a variable. So instead of I, we'll do L. And then instead of going to the invoices layout, we'll go to the invoice line items layout. So that's changed up. We'll create a new record, and then we'll target the invoice line items. Let's see, we want probably the item IDs, the first thing we want to parse. So let's see how we're going to handle that. And luckily, we can just extend this existing formula. We don't necessarily have to create this from scratch because technically we're following the path to the correct final key. And we have customers, so that takes care of that. We get invoices, that takes care of that. Next, we need line items. So this has to be line items, dot line items. And then we need a counter for that. So what's the counter going to be? It's going to be $L, except I need to join this properly. $L, ampersand, quote, closing bracket, and then our field name, dot item ID. And that will go in the invoice item ID. So now I will remove this field here. Let's make some room here. And I'll duplicate this so that we can get the remaining items, the remaining fields. So description will be pretty much the exact same thing, just description instead of item ID. There's our description, duplicate that. Then we go to quantity. And quantity. That takes care of quantity, and duplicate that. And we'll do price. There's our price. And next we need the invoice ID. So where are we going to get that? Right after we get the invoice ID up here in invoices, we'll set a variable and we'll call it invoice ID. And that's going to be from the invoices table, the invoice ID, which again, we have just captured in line 27 when we grabbed it from the JSON and put it in a field. Then we grab it from the field and put it in a variable, invoice ID, for the purposes of using it down here, where we want the invoice line items, invoice ID to be populated with invoice ID. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now save the script. Throughout this process, when I'm happy with the script at a certain point, I choose Command S on the keyboard or Control S if you're using Windows. That will save the script without having to worry about it. Okay, now we need to do the increment on this. So it won't be I, it'll be L. So $L and then $L plus 1. That takes care of that. And then the exit loop will be the same thing. $L total and L here. $L. Okay, so the idea is it'll come here to the invoices. After it parses the first invoice, it will look to see, is there any line items and how many? Then we parse each line item, exit that. Once this exits, it will continue on. It will flip the numbers and go all the way back to customers, and we start the whole process again. So 3 loops, 1, 2, 3, 1 for customers, 1 for invoices, 1 for invoice line items. Now, a best practice would be if you were to receive data that did not have an invoice, you might want to trap for that, because if you come here and the value is 0 or null, you might want to exit the script or present a warning to the user that says, you know, 1 or more customers has no invoice. Or you might want to just accommodate for that. Maybe it politely exits this part of the script if there's no invoices, because technically if there's no invoices, you want to skip this entire part because there's nothing to parse, there's no invoices. Or if by chance you have no line items, you'll want to skip this part right here. All of that is if there's no line items, you want to skip this. So it would be smart to put ifs in selected places if you think your data is going to come possibly in a situation where not all the data is there as you're expecting it. So that would be good practice. There's probably dozens of places here that you might want to put error trapping. For example, let's say that this date field over here in invoices date, maybe it's not formatted as a date, or maybe it comes in with the time as well. So it becomes a timestamp when you were expecting a date. Things like that need to be accommodated for when you're working with data that you parse. Okay, so let me tighten the script up a little bit and we'll put it through its paces. I'll run debugger. And well, it looks like I did it without running debugger. Let's see what happened. I'll go to contacts and we have our invoices. You can see they're related here in this portal. Okay, all the way to Charlie Brown. And then if I go to the invoices, I should have the correct amount of invoices. Looks like I have 9 invoices. Let's start at the first one. My first invoice has 1 line item, A1, widget 2, $15.99. That looks good. So our second invoice is A2 and B1. We have gadget, $25 and $9.99 for doodad. Then we go to 201 for customer 2, 3 line items. That looks correct. Then we have invoice 301 for Bob with 1 line item for gear, and then 2 line items, a tool and a machine. Then we have, we actually have 3 invoices, but this one has 3 line items. I get it. Yep. So we've got that equipment, contraption, device with their appropriate prices. That all looks correct. And then number 4 for Alice, we have 1 invoice, the first invoice with 1 line item, then 2 line items. That looks correct. And it made it all the way to Charlie Brown with the last invoice, 5 line items, contraption, gear, machine, apparatus, and utensil with the right quantities and pricing. We've done it. We've just parsed a fairly good amount of semi-complex JSON. I'd say this is probably medium. And we've done it in a way from a fresh, from scratch file where we were simply analyzing the data, and we were able to construct our tables and our relationships just by looking at this JSON document, which is, again, one of the claims to fame why JSON is so popular is because it's human readable as well as machine readable. It's a really flexible option. Provides a lot of information in a concise and easy to read manner. So the challenge would be to take a JSON document that you either create using, let's say, ChatGPT, tell it to go create some JSON, tell it what fields and tables you want, and it'll do that for you. Or you can take the sample here, it's downloadable from the first lesson, and run with it and see if you can recreate this with or without my help. And if you can do all that and get your head around it, you will have learned a lot about parsing JSON in a medium to medium complex way. Thanks for joining us on this lesson. To enroll in the free complete course, click on the link in the description or visit productivecomputinguniversity.com, where you'll find both free and paid courses on today's most important topics related to the Claris FileMaker platform.